Well, good evening, social media. Thank you for joining me this evening. Please like, share, comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Word on the Street Talk TV Worldwide, and then obviously multiple FCN Watchdog Media platforms. We are on YouTube, we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, as X now, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find our civil rights organization, nonprofit organization, any and everywhere just by looking up FCN Watchdog Media. Now, what we're going to talk about tonight is obviously you guys are already been updated about the case against State Farm Fire and Casualty Company that we have in the Ohio Supreme Court currently right now. Obviously, we have over 100 exhibits that you guys can take a peek at, which support each and every complaint that we have filed in the court. So today what I'm going to do is go over Exhibit 138 that was just filed in the Supreme Court with you all, so you guys can see exactly why we're filing the complaint, why we are seeking intervention from the Supreme Court, because State Farm pretty much got away with this and they were never held accountable. We went through multiple attorneys. There's multiple violations written all over this entire case from the very day one, from the beginning when the misconduct started with the Swanton Police Department, which is in a federal court right now. We have a case in the Northern District of Ohio against the Swanton Police Department for their part that they played in this entire scenario. So the reality of it is the day of accountability is going to come to pass. I don't care if it takes me 10 years. I don't care if it takes me 20 years. I don't care if my great-great-grandkids have to reap the benefits of what they robbed from us. They are going to pay for what they did. They're going to be held accountable. I'm not going to sit back and allow any other scamified attorney get involved and say, hey, I can help you take this to the finish line, because we went through two scamified attorneys, and at the end of the day, we're still fighting to get back what was taken from us. We were currently underinsured. We were insured by State Farm. They literally 8 days after our business was broken into decided to conduct an unlawful, biased investigation that lasted over 250 days. And while this investigation lasted under over 250 days, we were burglarized again. And all of our property that remained on the premises was taken from us. And it was because of a privacy breach that was done by State Farm corporate offices, according to the under oath statement by the person that did this. And also the agent, Jeff Lambert, located in Swanton, Ohio. All of these people are not only neighbors with each other, but they all had something to do with the misconduct that happened when our business was broken into and vandalized back in 2022. And then, with the fact that the mayor was involved and all of these different corporate people and city officials, and nothing was done about it, we're supposed to just say, let bygones be bygones and walk away. No, that's not the way it goes. We still have not received all of our property to this day. We have not received our furniture. We have TVs and things that we had on the walls in that building and on top of inventory, and everything else that was left there, personal and business, was robbed from us. And we're just not going to lay down and let that happen. State Farm will be held accountable because they were the insurance company that started this whole mess. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go over the exhibit here. Notification of filing to all counsel on record in the Supreme Court case 2025-1257. In the Supreme Court of Ohio, State of Ohio, Marquise L. Kimble, relator, case number 2025-1257, State Farm Fire and Casualty Company, respondent. Exhibit 138, 138A. Relator's summary of extraordinary and predatory investigative demands by State Farm's special agent, Lonnie Johnson, made only 13 days after hate crime incident and 10 days after recorded interview. demonstrating systematic bad faith, discriminatory bias, and violations of Ohio and federal law. Relator Minister Marquise L. Kimble respectfully submits this Exhibit 138-138A to document the January 31st, 2022 letter from State Farm Claims Specialist Lonnie Johnson, which contains a comprehensive list of extraordinarily invasive, disproportionate, and predatory investigative demands that were issued only 13 days after the documented hate crime incident and 10 days after a recorded interview. This letter, combined with Exhibits 136 and 137, forms a systematic pattern of bad faith, racial discrimination, and predatory investigation tactics designed not to adjust a legitimate claim, but to exhaust, intimidate, and ultimately deny coverage to a Black business owner and crime victim. The demands in this letter far exceed normal claims investigation protocols and suggest that State Farm deliberately designed an investigation it knew Relator could not satisfy. Contents of Exhibit 138A. Exhibit 138A is a January 31st, 2022 letter from Lonnie Johnson, State Farm Claims Specialist, Special Investigative Unit, sent personal and confidential. Not anymore, buddy. Any and everything that you say and said will be used against you, because anything that has been said from anybody from State Farm or their attorneys has now been made public. To Relator regarding claim number 3529N727R, policy number 95GDC70554, date of loss January 18th, 2022. The letter identifies the insured as Marquise Kimble. So let's start right there. They were already assuming and beginning to assume that this corporate insurance claim was a personal claim. They never once treated it as it was a corporate claim. They immediately began to focus their attention on me personally. That's where the mistake is, because we are a corporation that is made up of multiple partners and officers. It's not just me. So State Farm made the first mistake by sending a letter to me as if I was the insured. I was not the insured. And so then they say doing business as HCV Distribution Corporation. That's completely wrong. It should have said this letter is to HCV Distribution Corporation, attention Marquise Kimble, or attention Shaquille Spencer, or attention Jacqueline Kimble. It should have said an attention and made out to Marquise, or out to the corporation, but from the very beginning, this letter that came from this special investigative unit, the letter was framed as if it was Marquise Kimble acting as the corporation. And that's not right. That's invalid right there. And the loss at 108 South Main Street, Swanton, Ohio, 43558. Critical timeline, January 18th, 2022. Hate crime incident occurs in Swanton, Ohio. Swanton police respond and document Relator as the victim. So on the police report, they have me listed as the victim. So right there, we must take a look at why and how did State Farm come up with this suspect stuff or suspected of a crime when the original police report that was written about this incident clearly had me listed as a victim. January 28, 2022, on my birthday, I was told that I had to do a recorded interview with this Lonnie Johnson guy. This interview lasted over 3 hours. I didn't complain. I sat there and I allowed the guy to interview me as long as he wanted to. I don't have anything to hide, but something I said in that interview must have irritated him, because I don't know why all of a sudden he put a stop payment on our claim. Right after that interview is when the scam started. January 31st, 2022, as you can see, the timeline lines right up. On the interview day on my birthday, 2 days later, we were being investigated. 13 days after the hate crime, Lonnie Johnson issues an extraordinary list of investigative demands. Extraordinary and predatory nature of investigative demands. Demands go far beyond normal claims investigation. The January 31st, 2022 letter demands the following documents and information. Make sure we take a little side note here, and I tell you guys that all of this information that they requested was provided to them in 48 hours. Not one of these things that we're going to talk about here did we not provide. By within a week, they had ultimately all of this and more information. So much information that they lost track of what was being sent to them. Between the attorney and State Farm, some kind of way I was being told to send the same stuff over and over and over and over again. So as we can see here, what did they request? They wanted a request of the land contract agreement. Okay, so this takes out any argument the State Farm has or the Ohio Department of Insurance that this was a standard tenant and landlord dispute. If that was the case, then why in God's green earth were they asking for a land contract? Because the building was purchased. It was not a rental agreement. The lady had no business having entrance or having any way to go into that property and touch any of our belongings without a court order. She had no right, and she had no business, and she had no authorization to be able to talk to State Farm about anything concerning our claim. But however you want to slice the scam, these are the things that they asked for me after when he sent that letter, and he got everything he asked for within 48 hours. Business license, tax returns, cell phone records, business phone statements, video footage, ring alarm statements, complete inventory, copies of all statements and receipts, completed notarized sworn statement. And then it says, additionally, the letter warns that State Farm may request an examination under oath. Now, they did do this, but guess what? If we're talking about a letter here that is dated in January, we didn't have the under oath examination until March. So from January to March, these guys were trying to make a determination of whether they were going to put me under oath. That is another part of the scam. But it says they may request examination, which Johnson presents as a condition of the policy. These demands are extraordinary and disproportionate. Normal claims investigation for a straightforward hate crime burglary, which is what is on the police report, would require copy of a police report. Check. We gave them that. Initial loss of inventory. Check. We gave them that. Proof of ownership for major items. Check. We gave them that. Receipts for recently purchased items if possible. Check. We gave them that. State Farm's demands in this case go vastly beyond normal product protocols. Personal cell phone records, invasive, unnecessary for property loss. 2019, 2020 tax returns, irrelevant to whether a property loss occurred, suggests investigation for fraud, tax evasion. Detailed ring alarm statements over nearly 3 weeks suggest an attempt to catch realtor in inconsistency or to find evidence of orchestrated crime. Recorded interview only 10 days after hate crime, then immediately followed by massive document requests. Demands suggest predetermined fraud investigation, not loss adjustment. The scope and nature of these demands, especially requests for personal cell phone records, tax returns, and alarm disarm logs, are tactics used in insurance fraud investigations, not in standard claims adjustment for police documented property crimes. This suggests that State Farm had already predetermined that realtor was suspected of fraud. The investigation was designed to build a case against realtor, not to adjust the claim. Relator was being treated as suspect, not a victim of a hate crime. And I said realtor, but it's relator. I apologize. Let me say that again so you guys don't start calling me a scam. It is relator when you're dealing with the Ohio Supreme Court, not a realtor. There is a difference. The realtor sells you a house. The relator is the other word for the plaintiff. If you were in common pleas or small claims, you're represented as the plaintiff if you're suing someone. But in the Supreme Court, you're recognized as the relator. So let me go ahead and say that again. Don't hold that against me. I'm correcting myself. So again, number 3 says relator was being treated as a suspect, not a victim of a hate crime. That started with the Swanton Police Department when they took my damn fingerprints with no proper goals. Violations by State Farm and Special Agent Lonnie Johnson. His name sounds like a scam. Violation, bad faith claims handling, and unfair investigation tactics. Statutes, Ohio Revised Code 3901-19, 3901-109, Fair Claims Settlements Practices Act. State Farm's issuance of this extraordinary demands letter only 13 days after a police documented hate crime constitutes bad faith by deploying fraud investigation tactics without any factual basis for suspicion, created an impossible demands burden to obtain excuses for denial, substituting predatory investigation for fair claims adjustment, using document demands as intimidation rather than as legitimate investigation. Violation discriminatory claims practices, Ohio Revised Code 4112. Requesting personal cellular phone records, tax returns, and detailed alarm logs from a Black business owner only 13 days after his business was targeted in a documented hate crime while simultaneously treating him as a fraud suspect constitutes racial discrimination in claims handling by different treatment than similarly situated non-Black claimants who would receive. Presumption of guilt based on race and status as hate crime victim. Invasive personal information requests disproportionate to the claim. Retaliation for being targeted by a hate crime. C, violation, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing by issuing extraordinary demands designed to exhaust and intimidate relator rather than to fairly adjust his claim. State Farm breached the implied covenant by refusing to treat relator fairly. despite police documentation of victimization, adopting adversarial stance toward an innocent crime victim, using investigation as punishment rather than fact-finding. D, violation, invasion of privacy, and excessive information demands. Demanding personal cell phone records, detailed alarm logs, and tax returns from an individual is invasive and beyond the scope of legitimate claims investigation. This violates privacy protections, Fair Claims Settlement Practices Act, Ohio Consumer Protection Laws. Violations by State Farm attorney Lori Thompson. Attorney Lori Thompson, as State Farm's counsel, was aware of and responsible for ensuring that investigative demands comply with law and professional standards. By continuing to defend State Farm's investigation and denial without requiring correction of these extraordinary and predatory demands, Attorney Thompson ratified discriminatory investigation practices, violated her professional duty to ensure client compliance with the law, participated in bad faith by defending predetermined denial strategy, enabled harassment of a hate crime victim through predatory investigation demands, timeline predatory escalation. The sequence of investigative steps show systematic predatory intent. January 18, 2022, day 0. Hate crime occurs. Swanton police respond. Relator documented as victim. January 25, 2022, Lonnie Johnson reassigns to the Special Investigation Unit, Exhibit 137. January 26, 2022, Lonnie Johnson sends aggressive investigation letter, Exhibit 136. January 28, 2022, recorded interview held. January 31st, 2022, Lonnie Johnson issues extraordinary demands letter, Exhibit 138. This timeline shows no gap for legitimate preliminary investigation. Instead, it demonstrates a predetermined sequence designed to reassign to fraud investigators, send threatening letters, conduct pressure interviews, issue impossible demands. Then you can see it breaks down every single code that they broke. Ohio Revised Code 4112, racial discrimination in services. Extraordinary demands only 13 days after hate crime. Different treatment than non-black claimants. State Farm, Lonnie Johnson. Cell phone records, tax returns, detailed alarm logs, requested 13 days. Hold on 1 second. Breach of implied covenant, refusing to act in good faith toward insured, predatory investigation designed to justify denial, discrimination in services affecting commerce, title and incorporation of Exhibit 138. Relator requests that this filing be accepted and designated as Exhibit 138, 138A. Letter from State Farm Claims Specialist Lonnie Johnson. And then as you guys can see, I have signed it and it is filed. So State Farm, we're not going to let go of your scam. What you did was illegal, and we're going to hold you accountable to the fullest extent of the law. I don't give a damn if we have to turn in 200 exhibits. We're going to prove to the court what you did, and our exhibits already prove it. You can take a look at all of the exhibits and see exactly what State Scam did. Stay away from State Farm. It's a scam. If you're African American, do not employ State Scam for anything. You will be scammed.